Hello, welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. I have started this video a number of times. I might start it a few times more, but I think I'll leave this intro at this point. Got a little bit of a cold, so my throat's not 100%, and recording this thing 5 or 6 times is going to really take a toll on me, but we soldier on. Fair warning given. I'm talking about sex and role-playing games. This is episode 69, and I am 12 years old on the inside. So it had to be the sex and RPGs episode. I'm going to be talking about some sex stuff, adult themes, mature subjects. It is not all going to relate to human intimacy. There are going to be mention of other subjects which are generally considered mature and adult themes, some of them dark and grim and gritty, if that's how you term it. If these things are going to offend you, if you are already a little twitchy about watching this because you're not sure how you're going to react, you can stop watching now. You're not going to offend me. I don't want to offend you. And I'd rather not get the views on this than offend people. We good? Okay. Role-playing games are storytelling. You are storytelling as a group when you are playing a role-playing game, and that's awesome. It's one of the deepest and most powerful endeavors I have experienced creatively. Storytelling for humans, and apparently for a number of computers, involves sex. Stories don't have to involve sex. They really don't. You don't have to have a sexual interaction or even mention of sex or gender in a story. There's millions of stories without it. But when you look at the history and culture of storytelling, the prince is after the princess for a reason. If you've got a table of mature gamers, and by mature I mean able to deal with sexual issues, with human intimacy, with anatomical terms, then you have room for sex in your role-playing game. It may already have happened. And if there are people at your table who do not meet that requirement of maturity, for God's sake, keep it out. Like I said, there are millions of stories that don't include it. You don't really need to have it. You certainly don't need to have any details. I'm going to be going through a number of things over this discussion where you leave it out. Because leaving it out is as important a decision as putting it in. The really hard part about this is not only addressing these subjects, but not shouting, "That's what she said," every 5 minutes. I can't do that. I am trying to be respectful and dignified in this, and I'm already doing it on episode 69, so I've got a mark against me, or two. Human culture, human development, human society, human biology. Right above that fight or flight that is at the core of our lizard brain is the mammalian mating urge. It's in there. It's hardwired. There are people who do not feel it, and I envy them from time to time. But a lot of our psyche and biology, a lot of our drives and passions are based on drive and passion. The desire to procreate, or if not to procreate, to engage in the activity recreationally. It is core to our experience as human beings. even non-procreational intimate activity. I'm not going to tell you who you're going to want to be intimate with. That's up to you. Or your characters, or both for that matter. What is important is that, one, including this in a role-playing game can be rocket fuel for the story. It adds levels of tension and storytelling and depth of emotion and immersion that is just, it makes everything just one step more engaging. Two, it's something that you cannot afford to do in every game in every group, even a group of mature players. That bears more discussion. I don't want to make this entire thing about what not to do in your role-playing game, okay? Because there's more important stuff or more entertaining stuff to talk about. Perhaps not more important. Every role-playing game has a starting point. Every session that you have, every campaign you're going to go on, where you're going to start at the beginning of this thing and go all the way to the end and beat the bad guy or not, but you're going to have a hell of a ride trying. And that game does not begin when you sit down with your finished character sheet and start rolling dice to see what your character does. That game does not begin when you sit down at a table with a blank character sheet and start rolling dice to see what that character can do. That game begins when someone says, I have an idea for a game. That game begins at a 0 session, a session before your first session. Before dice get picked up, or you've pulled the book down off the shelf, or you've started to find out who's got the working printer this week so they can actually make character sheets happen. It starts when you sit down as a group or get online and start discussing it, and the concepts start going around. What do you want this game to be? What do you want this game to do? At some point in that discussion, if you're interested in including sexual intimacy, mature subjects, adult themes in your games, this is when to ask if everyone's good with that. It doesn't have to be an accusation of, well, I know this person would. Nah. Is everyone good with that? And if there is the slightest amount of resistance, don't do it. You don't need it. It's an optional add-on. It's a little bit of, it's an extra shot of espresso in your coffee. It's closing your eyes and holding your arms up on the roller coaster instead of just holding on for dear life. It's not necessary. It's great to have, but it is not worth offending, or worse, making someone at that table uncomfortable. Yeah, you want the characters to get out of their comfort zone. You want the players to push the characters past their limits, but you don't want to make the players, any of the players, not one of them, uncomfortable with deeply personal subject matter. That's not my kink. I can't do that. I'm not comfortable doing that in the game. I don't discuss that outside of certain relationships. I don't want to do that. It doesn't have to be more than I don't want to do that. You don't need an explanation. You don't need someone to justify their limits. There's a limit. Accept that. Move on. If you've got a group that is moving forward without those limits, and they're out there, they may already have asked you as a game master the most important question in a game that addresses intimate issues. So, what do I roll to do it? The level of detail is up to you. If you think you can describe stuff pretty good, throw it out there and see if anyone wants to do it that way. If not, you can always just, well, you're into it and they're into it, and you're a person and they're a person, and a person thing's going to happen. So give me a roll on this and that and see what happens. We'll draw a dark curtain over this for taste's sake and move on. Say things happened well if y'all make your rolls. Doesn't have to be detailed. It can be. What do you roll? Yeah. A lot of games have a seduction skill. D&D 5th has a performance skill. I usually suggest Constitution or Stamina as a controlling stat, but that's up to you and how you want to do it. As a game master, think about it. Seriously, think about it. Someone's going to ask that question at some point in time. It's the old D&D trope, you know, if there's any girls here, I'm going to do them. Well, you know, that happens. Have an answer. It doesn't have to be, you know, don't sweat over it and flip through the books and take 5 minutes of everyone's game time to come up with how they're going to do it. Just do it. We are built around not just biological needs, but the social needs. You know, you need to have relationships. You need to have friendships. You need to have things happen. There's pressure on people of all walks of life to engage in these things. And if it's just that, if it's just the social stuff that you're getting into, okay, that's fun-ish. It's there. It's an extra level of detail, but oh, Jesus, gamers. Oh my God, gamers. Doesn't matter what group I've been in, someone wants to crossplay. There's nothing wrong with that. You're playing a character in a role-playing game. There is no limit to what's on that page aside from what's in the rules. So I'm going to play a female ranger this time. Okay. Some guys suck at playing female characters and really shouldn't do it, but some guys do it really well. It's a matter of experience and personal taste and how into it someone gets, and that's fine. Crossplays vastly increases the gender mix of the party of adventurers when you do not have a very gender mixed group of people at the table. I have seen a lot of all-man gaming groups. It happens. I've run for tables full of women. That was fun. A group of female space marines trying to save a colony from aliens, and the amount of explosions and destructions. Hazel, Dana, Mandy, I love you. That was a great game. We gotta do it again sometime. Someone wants to play someone maybe a little more promiscuous. Okay. Well, now you've got to deal with that. And that promiscuity can be a form of, well, you know, I just do things. I'm happier doing things. Maybe they're looking to have an experience in the game that brings them some level of emotional satisfaction. Maybe they just think it'll be fun. Hard to say what someone is going to enjoy in a role-playing game. Someone may use the time-honored tactic of using their sexuality or their character's sexuality as a weapon. James Bond would not be James Bond if James Bond did not do the dirty with someone at least once a movie, if not several times more, to infiltrate an organization or ingratiate someone to their cause, or perhaps try and turn someone's loyalties. Because, okay, James Bond is a pig and probably a terrible example, but he killed Goldfinger. I can't be that upset with him. I hate Goldfinger. Literature is full of characters who express a certain amount of sexuality and use that sexuality. The only limits on this in a role-playing game are taste, personal limits, and what the table will bear. All of these are variable. I'm not going to tell you how far to or to not take your sexual intimacy in a role-playing game. There are role-playing games written specifically to take the whole sexual aspect of it too far. I'm not going to name names. They're out there. And if something makes you uncomfortable, stop. And if something makes your table or your group uncomfortable, stop. Don't have to do that. There is 1.5 million games out there. You've got access to hundreds of thousands of stories you can tell. You can create something off the top of your head. You don't need to, well, we've got this in front of us, so we're going to have to go through it, and you're going to have to deal with this. No, that's not fun. That's not engaging. That's not a leisure activity. That's torture for certain people. I know. I've been those certain people. You take something that far, you're not just wrecking the game, you're threatening a friendship. It happens. And you want to stray away from that. You hit someone's limits, you stop. When do you introduce sex into your role-playing game? Yeah, when do you introduce it in a movie or in a story or see it on TV? As a game master, you're rarely going to have to worry about when you're going to introduce sex into the role-playing game. Your players are totally going to do it for you. We've come into town. Where's the brothel? If I had a nickel for every brothel that my D&D characters looked for, I'm looking for a attractive member of insert gender here so that I can do a insert thing here with them. What do I roll? Oh, we need to get into that building, huh? Well, that guard looks attractive. I'll see if I can distract them. I had to include a rule in a role-playing game. Had to. That you probably couldn't seduce someone that was on fire. More to the point, you couldn't seduce someone that you had just set on fire. Why did I have to include this rule? Because someone tried to do that in a role-playing game. Because the rules didn't say they couldn't. Players. And it's not every player. But you've got that one or two in every group. Okay, maybe not every group. You get that one or two every so often who, well, okay, I'm going to max out seduction and I'm going to do everything with that particular skill. Okay. Full disclosure, I did that once. Maybe more than once, but once I was super blatant about it. Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, Red Dwarf role-playing game. Don't know if you're familiar with the world. I was playing a mechanoid, a robot like Crichton the Android. I was playing one of the Hudson models. They're the more advanced, more powerful. And androids in the Red Dwarf universe are equipped with a groinal socket. It's what it sounds like. But there's a lot of attachments that you can get for it, like egg beaters or vacuum cleaners or stuff. Red Dwarf's a really funny show, and the role-playing game tried to play up as much of that as possible. And so I took a number of skills, the maximum number of skills that I possibly could, with a unique specialization. I specialized in using my groinal socket to perform these skills. And it wasn't just the seduction skill, although that was, in fact, on the character sheet. No, I would use my groinal socket for just about everything. Cooking, combat, firearms, first aid. You get an extra bonus when you're using a specialization skill. So I could use the skills normally, but if I really wanted to have any success, I had to use an attachment on my groinal socket to get it done. It was one of the running gags of the campaign. It never failed to get a laugh, and I still feel a little bit dirty about it to this day. But it was funny, yo. You can play up sex in your game for laughs. You can play it up for tension. You can play it up for tragedy. Characters that are the victims of violence, as a part of their backstory, are ridiculously common in role-playing games. But you're in a violent society, usually, or a character who has to engage in violence and has somehow become inured to it, and a certain amount of PTSD on the character sheet is not a bad way to go about it. It makes for a complex character that is interesting and sometimes difficult to play, and that is good role-playing. A certain amount of PTSD on the part of the player is something that you need to be aware of and steer around. You don't need to bring that up. It's a interesting thing to include in the game, but it's all and always optional and should always be optional. And the amount of taste that you use when you do this. Obviously, there was not a lot of taste involved in my groinal socket specialization character. That was low camp humor at very best. And, you know, a pie in the face will get a laugh, and a hammer to the crotch will do so as well. And I've spent more than enough time in role-playing games calling shots to the groin for effect and laughs. So you can go lowball with it. You can keep it classy. It's up to you. It's up to the group. And it's up to the game. There aren't a lot of hard guidelines for stuff like this because you got to know your group. That 0 session is super important to get that tone that you want in the game. And even then, you might have to shift up through the game. I offered to run a grim and gritty cyberpunk game for my Wednesday night group. Oh, and they were into it. They were we'd had some lighthearted stuff, but nah, grim, gritty cyberpunk. I was running in the world of the Hot Chicks role-playing game I wrote just after the War for Hell, where people had fought off the aliens and demons that were trying to despoil the earth and trying to recover in an age where mankind has a brighter destiny but a harder fight ahead of them. There's room for some cyberpunk there. There's room for some anti-corporate, anti-establishment, running around shooting things, having running gun battles, driving really fast down broken roads. Grim, gritty, cyberpunk. So we had the guy who was experimented on in hell by aliens. He was half car. He'd been painfully merged with machinery while he was conscious. Tortured, experimented on. He wasn't all there, but he was functional. For the most part, best driver they were ever going to have. There was the cyber assassin. Quiet, deadly, 1,000-yard stare. Didn't really care about much anymore, but he was one of the best people that there was at what he does, and what he did wasn't very pretty. And then there was the green space bear master of disguise. Yeah, everyone got the grim and gritty memo, but not everyone read it. There were a few grim and gritty moments in that game, but there was a green space bear master of disguise. He had an ability called Unfathomable in the victory system. It was no matter how unusual you look, people assume that you're normal because they just do. It's a thing. The universe conspires to make you seem regular to them. You see someone with this disadvantage. You see a 6-foot blue rabbit walking down the street in a trench coat. You look and go, man, a trench coat at this time of year? So the green space bear would put on a funny hat and a pair of glasses, and that'd be a disguise, and people wouldn't recognize it. Yeah, grim and gritty got changed up a lot over the course of that adventure, and not there was sexual interaction in this game too. I will leave that to your imagination for the moment. If you really want, leave a comment and I'll talk about it later, but yeah, maybe not. What happens in the game is not just the purview of the game master. The game master is going to lay down some scenarios, yes. You're going to have a storyline, yes, but the player is going to take things in different directions. The player is going to do things in that game the game master never imagined and sometimes really wishes that they wouldn't. But you can't put players in box. Player characters are the most destructive force in the known universe. You can take any set of player characters and they will break any box you try and put them in and then stuff it in your rectum, because that's what player characters do. So you're going to get intimacy. You're going to get butt jokes. And if you're good with that, you're good with that. And if you as the game master have a hard limit in those areas, you make sure, let's not go there. Let's just pull the curtain over the scene, say everything happened, and move on. It's always an option. And people's sensibilities around the table may change. Some folks have different levels of ability to deal with that stuff, and changing. I know a lot of this seems like common sense, and a lot of it seems like stuff that you should already know, or you already do, or it seems like, well, if people are doing this activity, they probably already have a sense of whether people around them are comfortable or not, and no, a lot of people don't. Remembering that you can include elements of intimacy and subject matter that people in the game find uncomfortable. Don't forget that there are some game masters who think that it is them against the player. And that gets uncomfortable and a little traumatic really fast. And you care about your character in general. You're trying to play the character as best you can. You get a little involved, you get emotionally invested, and it's a good game. And see things happen to that character that you do not want to see happen. Getting shot, that's one thing. It's an injury. You expect that. That's a potential risk that you walk into it with. If there are potential risks you're not good with, you make sure the game master knows that, and the game master crosses that line, you walk away from the table. There are any number of incidents where I, as a player, had a character who was, well, let's be frank, victimized. I wasn't. I did not have a pleasant experience. I had long, agonized sessions of trying to work out what I was feeling about these things afterwards, and it was unpleasant. I was feeling unpleasant. I was feeling stressed, aggravated, angry. Not my character was angry. And if you're getting to that point, not that game, not that group, not that GM. Don't have to make a big thing out about it. Just leave. This is a more serious discussion that I really wanted to have about the subject matter, but it bears some serious discussion. There's nothing wrong with including intimacy and sex and mature subjects and things in your role-playing games. They can propel the experience over the top and give you something powerful. You can have generations of characters and stories that last decades. You can also wreck friendships, upset people, give someone a bad week or worse. So I guess the long and the short of it is, be aware, have a zero session, bring these things up. If someone lets you know that they're getting uncomfortable with it, stop, draw a line. Okay, no more. We'll draw the curtain over things from this point in time. And never be afraid to draw the curtain over things. If the game master is uncomfortable with something, you know what? I'm going to draw the curtain over this, and we'll move on. It's always an option. If someone wants to really address this thing that happened between this character and that thing, okay, you know what? Write it down. Write a short story. I'll give you extra experience for doing it, okay? That lets their experience be something richer, and you can deal with it either as fiction or something that you say you read, but you read the last line, and yeah, that was pretty good. I like that. In the end, what this activity is about, what playing a role-playing game is about, in my opinion, is you're telling a story together. You're getting together to tell a story. And in stories, there's ups and there's downs, there's conflicts, and there's relationships, whether they're the staunch friends back to back or the lovers. It happens. That's what stories are made of, is the relationships and the conflict in the relationships. And because we're humans, sex can be a part of that. Sex is often a part of that. It doesn't have to be, but that's the story that you choose to tell. Tell the story that you choose to tell. Tell it carefully, with consideration for the people at the table, and have fun. Friday the 13th, whole series of movie about people having sex and getting killed. It's fun. It's ridiculous at points, and maybe not the best example to throw, but I've played psycho killer games where you're all being chased around by not unentertaining if that's the mindset that you're in. Find the genre that you want to play in. If you want to play fantasy, well, you want to play Game of Thrones fantasy, because, well, then guess what? Roll to have the walk of shame. Thank you for following me through this. This is a much fun to do. Again, I had a number of starts trying to do this, and I want to be sensitive about this kind of thing. At the same time, it bears a little talking about. It's not something that doesn't belong in the hobby or industry. It just needs to be dealt with seriously, like adults, like mature folks, like properly mature adults, not, yeah. If you're enjoying the videos, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy the video, which I could understand, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you've got experience with this kind of stuff in your games, leave a carefully worded comment down below. And if you have any questions or comments, or just want to let me know something, comments. I love getting comments. You'll love leaving me a comment. If you'd like to see these videos when they come out, hit the subscribe button. Hit the little bell button next to that too, so you get the notifications when the subscriptions happen, or when the videos come out. If you really dug the video, feel free to hit me up on my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/DeCorum. Consider donating. Anything helps, and lets me make more videos more often. In the meantime, thanks again for watching. I am Scott Corum. This is What Has Mattered to Me, and I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.